Hello and welcome to the Chaska Human Rights Commission. Tonight is Thursday, September 28th, and my notes say the 23rd because I'm looking at the minutes from last week, so that threw me off. A couple things before we start the meeting. You'll notice that Nate and I are in chambers as required by the statute for public meetings. And we're not wearing masks, which feels kind of odd to me. The governor has made an exception for public forums and meetings like this, as long as you're socially distanced, which we are, that we can take our mask off so we have better communication with the people that we're talking with. Then the other thing is I get to read the long statement, so bear with me and then we'll get our meeting started. Welcome everyone. As you can tell, this meeting looks a little different. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are holding our meeting via video teleconference. Because the City Council has declared a local emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, state statutes allow us to hold our city meetings remotely. When we aren't meeting in person, we want to make sure the public can participate. If you have joined the Zoom meeting, you will notice that you're muted. We have a moderator on call who will unmute those who wish to speak during the public comment portions of the meeting. Public comments will be reserved for visitor presentation, public hearings, or special circumstances determined by the commission. Once we reach those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on participants in the bottom of your screen and then select the raise hand icon. If you wish to speak and you have joined the meeting by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name or phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the commission and is meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the city of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, obscene, indecent, or off-topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. Those of you watching online or on Comcast Channel 15, please be aware of the following. Some of our human rights commissioners, city staff, and presenters are participating in the meeting remotely. There is a delay between the live meeting and the online and cable broadcast, and all commission actions will be taken by roll call vote. We are working hard to make sure your voice can be heard while we do our best to protect everyone's health and safety. Thank you for your patience and constructive feedback as we work through this unprecedented situation. Okay, now we can move on to the meeting at hand. We'll start out with roll call. Nate, can you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Carlson.
Commissioner Carlson is muted.
Well, it looks like most people are.
Of course. Thank you. I'm here.
All right. Commissioner Bean.
Here.
Commissioner Haga.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Spreadbury.
Here.
Commissioner Dunbar.
Here.
And Commissioner Welvert.
Here.
All right, we've got everyone in attendance, no absence tonight.
Okay. The next portion is our guest presentation, open forum. Kevin, do we have?
One moment, we do have the agenda to adopt.
The agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Who was that?
Sarah
That
Carl.
was me, Ellen.
Bean.
Okay. All right, and I'll do the roll call vote. Commissioner Dunbar.
Here.
Commissioner Carlson.
Yes.
Commissioner Bean,
Here.
Commissioner Haga,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Spreadbury,
He's muted.
Yes.
and Commissioner Welvert.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now we'll move on to guest presentation and open forum. Kevin, is there anyone on the line who would like to speak tonight?
There's currently no one on the line.
Okay. We'll move on to item 4, which is approving the minutes from our last meeting on July 23rd. Any discussion on that or changes to that?
This is Commissioner Haga. I'll move the minutes.
Okay, do it.
This is Sarah Carlson. I'll second it.
Right, and I'll call roll. Commissioner Dunbar,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bean,
Yes.
Commissioner Haga,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Spreadbury,
Still yes. Sorry.
and Commissioner Welvert.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Our next item is the treasurer's report. So Nate, could you please give that to us?
Yes. So for the month of, September here, there was no additional expenditures. And so we began the month at a balance of $1,684.95. We end the month at the same amount.
Okay, that's fascinating.
That's that's all I have to say about that.
I'm not sure. We had talked about this in the minutes from the last meeting, but someone had suggested that we ask about carrying over our budget to next year,
Mhm.
since we haven't been able to spend much. Has that been brought up to the council or?
Yeah, so typically how the budget process works is a year is a year. And so when you close out the year, the general fund needs to be reconciled, and those dollars either go into sort of our reserve funds or not, right? And so then you start the year over fresh with the budget. And so I don't think that's going to be really an option. It hasn't been in the past years. So we would start out the next year with the same budget that we had for this year.
Is there a COVID exception?
Unfortunately, no, there has not been, that has not been addressed by the governor in his executive orders. So the budget process remains the same. And so next year we would start out with the same, $2,000 budget. I think as we'll talk about later on in this meeting, as we get into the item 6B, discussing joint work session next steps. We are talking about how we can add resources by way of staff and things like that to the work that the commission does. So I guess I'd encourage you to think about, there's other ways that we can add resources to your work beyond simply budget. I understand the desire for more budget, but at the same time, we should create a budget that's going to spend what we're allotted anyway. So yep.
If they can't roll that over, could we ask for a budget of $3,000 this year?
I can talk to the city administrator about that, but I think before we make the ask, it would be good to think about what our future plans are, and the intention behind more money. We've had balances for a few years running.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next item is 6A. I will just read this report that was prepared by Nate. Commissioner Daryl Scarborough submitted his voluntary resignation to the Human Rights Commission and City Council on August 30th, 2020. The City Council formally accepted the resignation at their September 14th meeting. Mr. Scarborough's letter of resignation is attached for your reference, so you've all gotten a copy of that. Mr. Scarborough was originally appointed to the Human Rights Commission on February 25th of 2019. The City Council thanks Mr. Scarborough for his community service and wishes him success in his upcoming pursuits. And I just would like to add to that and say that I'm glad we had the opportunity to serve with Commissioner Scarborough on the commission, get to know him. And I appreciate what he has brought to the commission and to the community. I hope we'll meet up again sometime and continue working towards human rights pursuits and standing up for each other and standing with each other. The next thing that's on our agenda is discussing the joint work session that we had last month with City Council. And Nate has prepared a report that I will not read to you, but kind of summarizes what happened at that meeting and gave us kind of a basis for having a discussion about where do we see the commission going from here and what do we hope for the future of it. Nate, do you want to say anything else before we start the discussion?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I do want to share some of staff's thoughts to help lay some groundwork for you to at least think on. And I think we're interested in your feedback on the direction that we're sort of recommending and thinking about. I did include in the agenda packet the summary report, which was done by the Fersmans who led the discussion, and really it's intended to capture kind of the consensus of feedback and the things that opinions seemed to sort of formulate around as it pertained to each of the 4 different discussion questions that we had for our breakout discussions. So it's not intended to be anything that says that's the direction that we shall go. It's notes from the meeting, trying to pull out the high points so that it can form next steps. So that's there for your reference, and we can certainly talk about it. But I want to give you an update on some of the things that staff have been talking about coming out of that meeting, and some of the ideas that we want to suggest for your feedback. I think there's an opportunity here for the Human Rights Commission to become more involved across a broader array of the City of Chaska's work, working with our departments in a more intentional and direct way. I think what we've talked about is starting out with departments that have much higher levels of direct, I guess we call it customer interaction. So our police department and our Parks and Rec department are the 2 that we've been working with in having discussions with to this point. And both of those departments, even before the joint work session, have talked about, I think they have a longstanding relationship and a lot of partnerships throughout the community to do the work that they do that exists on its own. The Parks Department has been talking more recently over the last year or 2 about sort of re-looking at the slate of programming that they offer and thinking about how do they create programming that is appealing to a broader audience, meets the needs of a broader audience, and also thinking about the longstanding programming, like, I don't know, swim lessons come to mind as a sort of a bread and butter program that they provide. How do they work to include more people from our Chaska population, a more reflective group of people in those programs that exist that are sort of viewed as a core program as well. So I think there's opportunity for new programs to be created, to rethink about how we do, those core programs and everything in between. And so the Parks and Rec Department, I think, is interested in working with the Human Rights Commission more directly to get feedback in an advisory role, so that staff, as they're thinking through some of these things, would have, you know, a sounding board in the Human Rights Commission to bring forward their ideas and get and sort of get another perspective to improve what they're doing. So that's one opportunity or idea. Another one is the police department, thinking about a lot of the work and outreach that Julie Jenke does to develop community partnerships and you know, be out developing relationships between the police department and our community, and thinking about opportunities for the Human Rights Commission to kind of serve in a similar role as the Parks and Rec Department idea, as sort of a sounding board advisory, so that Julie, as she's thinking about her, you know, next year's plans, or maybe she's devising a new program or re-looking at an existing one, coming to the Human Rights Commission to talk through those things and get your feedback and your ideas and see, you know, what might be incorporated based on the direction that you'd have to give. I think on both of those sides too, there's an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission. We acknowledge that you all really enjoy volunteering, rolling up your sleeves and being involved directly. And I think there's opportunities within that for that to happen also. So there's plenty of community events that the Parks and Rec Department does that we can continue to think about the Human Rights Commission's role and getting involved in that way. We also have, you know, sort of the Chaska Cares program that has evolved out of our response to COVID. Food distribution events have been part of that. Mask drives, coloring book drives were held. And so things like that, as that continues to evolve, I think present volunteer opportunities and also ways for the Human Rights Commission to weigh in and provide, you know, guidance and things like that as we're thinking about that going forward. So that's Chaska Cares, Parks and Rec Department, Police Department, I think opportunities that lie within that. So, and also, I guess I want to frame it in ways that I view there's probably three roles that stand out to me that the Human Rights Commission can really develop and play as we're going forward. It's that advisory role that I'm talking about with the police department and their community outreach work, and that advisory role with the Parks and Recs department as they're thinking about their programming. It's the volunteer role that, you know, I'm talking about here, and you already do a lot of that, and I think that can grow by giving, you know, just more opportunities to get involved. And then there's also, I think, a role to be played that the Human Rights Commission could consider involvement on other boards that are in the community. And so right now, I think a parallel would be the council. Each council member has another board that they serve on, and then they report back to the city council about that work. So for one example would be Council Member Wong is on the Southwest Transit Board. And so he attends their meetings, is a part of that board as a voting member. And then he, you know, reports back to the council on a regular basis on as to what they're up to and, you know, what's going on at Southwest Transit. So that's one example. Each commissioner or each council member has their own example. And I think that could be an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission. I don't know whether that it would, you know, be every commissioner is serving on a board. I think that there's an opportunity there to think about that. But I do think that there's some that we could try to connect with, you know, sooner than later. One of them that stands out would be the group called Iconic. They're already working quite a bit with our Parks and Rec department and they really look at creating services and connecting people to services who have cognitive and physical disabilities. And so they've done some work to create programming within our Parks and Rec department that are, you know, accessible to, you know, looking at kids with autism as an example. There's been some programming developed around that, working with Iconic. I think that would be a group to approach to see if there's a role to be had in maybe a Human Rights Commission member being a part of their board. And whether it's a voting member or as an advisory role or whatever the case may be, I think there's room to talk about that. I also know that the school district is doing a lot of work on the equity front, and they've got some advisory groups that are involved in that. I think it'd be worth having a conversation. You know, is there an opportunity for a Human Rights Commission member to maybe be involved in that? And I think what we could do is use that as an opportunity to seek connections and explore overlap. The city shares a lot of the goals on the equity side. And so I think at a staff level, we're already working together on some of these things. And so I think that could maybe be grown, and that'd be an area to explore. So there's just a couple examples that come to mind. I think there's probably more that we could explore. But those are 3 roles that I think we could develop more. I think they come out of what we talked about at the joint work session. I think those are roles that the council would share a lot of support for. And so I want to throw those out for your consideration. I also want to talk about process here and what we're trying to achieve. I think what we view would be a really positive thing is to use the joint work session and the notes that the Fersmans put together, and taking feedback from you all tonight. I think what I would recommend is that we go forward and continue to work with staff in these key departments, and develop a work plan or a strategic plan, whatever we want to call that, that would outline, key areas and roles, some core objectives, based on the feedback both tonight and the work session, and then get into, strategies or implementation steps. Really focusing, I think, on the next year, but also projecting forward probably for the next 3 to 5 is typically what a strategic plan is going to look at. And so work on that. Then we would aim to have that be something that we could bring back to the October meeting, get your feedback on, incorporate that further feedback and revision, and shoot to have a final document to present to you in November. Hopefully, it would be something that you'd be able to accept. Assuming that's the case, we would then want to bring it to the council and get their sign off on it as well. I think the benefit of that is now we've got a guiding document that's really clarifying the Human Rights Commission's roles, what it wants to do, what it seeks to do. It's derived by your direction with staff assistance, and then has that opportunity for the council to approve, so that we're all sort of working out of the same songbook, so to speak, at that point. I think what we would do with that document then going forward is every year, probably around this time of year, we could refresh it, take a look, think about what makes sense for the upcoming year, and continue to use that document to guide the work that we do, and also foster that mutual communication and understanding between the Human Rights Commission and the City Council. So that's sort of a process that we're talking about, and I would recommend and seek your feedback on. I think with that, I'd like to open up for discussion. I'd be happy to answer any questions or help clarify some of the ideas that I'm putting forward here, but I'm also curious to know what you think, because ultimately this is your commission. So,
can you clarify something when you talk about partnering with the other, like Parks and Rec or the police? Can you clarify, would we just be assisting and partnering with them on their projects, or will the Human Rights Commission still be able to kind of come up with their projects, like the MLK breakfast or something that's been a Human Rights Commission thing? Would it be, some ownership on our part on things, or just helping out with stuff?
I think it's a mix. And so I think the standing things that you all have today, the MLK breakfast, River City Days booth. There's also sort of those special projects that come up from time to time, like we were pursuing that Green Card Voices project. Prior to that, we did the video series and we did the Holocaust exhibit. I think those are all things that the Human Rights Commission continues to do, continues to have really an ownership over. But I think the opportunity there is, in particular, working with the Parks and Rec Department, they have programmers who are very good at doing events, who are very skilled at doing those sorts of things. I think it brings resources, for example, to the MLK event, beyond just good old Nate. If we can get some of our excellent programmers involved, I think that adds, more fuel to the event and more ability to pull things off. That said, I think it still is, remains in the direction of you all. I would still recommend we continue to have the subcommittee that's, formulating the ideas and things. But I think there could be a broader reliance or a bigger reliance on staff, if you desire to kind of pull off the nitty gritty in the details of the event. On the side of, events that the Parks and Rec Department are really, in charge of, and that's, their thing to do, or likewise for the police department, it's more of an advisory role at that point. And so it's them coming to you, presenting their idea, asking for your feedback. They can, take your feedback and incorporate it as it makes sense. But it's not necessarily a decision-making role from the Human Rights Commission in that way.
So I think some things that we need to consider if we go in that direction is how does the communication happen? Does someone from Parks and Rec attend our meetings, or do we attend meetings that we're invited to as different events come up? Or do we have a certain person that volunteers to I'll be the Parks and Rec connection, or does it, these are just logistics that I've come up with questions as you're explaining it.
I view it as the Parks and Rec department coming to our meeting and presenting a whatever the thing is, and seeking your feedback as a group. I don't view it as, you all attending their staff meetings or something like that. It would really be, them, preparing their thing, coming to present it to you, seeking an opportunity for discussion and feedback. And that's kind of the advisory role that the Human Rights Commission is playing in that format.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or questions? Commissioner Carlson, I saw your hand first. I see you, Kaylee. Sarah, you're muted.
Currently, I serve on the Bike Awareness Committee with Parks and Recreation. If you'll recall, Parks and Recreation came to the Human Rights Commission, or came to Nate, I'm not sure how that process worked initially, and said perhaps somebody from Human Rights would be interested in this. And so I've been, albeit we have not been meeting a lot, but I have been meeting, and on that Bike Awareness Committee meeting or group, and Marshall Grange has scheduled a meeting for early October. I think it's October 8th, just to kind of have an update and share about biking activities. So in a sense, I see us probably already having a connection with Parks and Recreation Department. I'm assuming, as Nate described, it would be a similar situation. They would come to the Human Rights Commission and say, hey, we would value your opinion or expertise, or your take on this programming. And one of the Human Rights Commissioners would volunteer, as I did, to be a representative as long as that the programming from Parks and Rec needed. So just wanted to share that process that I've been doing that with Parks and Rec. Does that process describe what you are thinking about, Nate?
I think that's one model.
Okay.
So in this case, in the example that you're sharing, there's a committee that's dedicated towards, moving forward with the bike friendly community initiative.
Right. Right.
And so that group is advising, that work, participating in that work, et cetera. So I think, that's an example of, a Human Rights Commission member serving on an advisory board or group, and then reporting back, and using that role to share Human Rights Commission's perspective to inform that work. I think another way that this could also work, and I don't think it's a binary thing here. It's probably both, right? I think that as Parks and Rec is developing particular programs or strategies, they can come to the Human Rights Commission as a whole, present that thing, and it might be, a single discussion, or it might be a discussion that requires follow-up. It kind of depends. But not all Parks and Rec initiatives have a community advisory group informing that. And so, sometimes the level of the work doesn't demand that. It just demands, some feedback from the community. And so I think the Human Rights Commission can play a role in that way as well.
Commissioner Haga, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so I guess one of my concerns with that, and I appreciate using the Human Rights Commission as in an advisory capacity to some of these groups, but and with no offense intended to my fellow commission members, when I look at my screen, I see a lot of us have a lot of things in common. And so when we are talking about how can we do programming that might reach different aspects of the community, I don't know that this commission as it stands right now is going to offer any different ideas than the folks that are currently working in those departments. And so, I mean, from my perspective, I think one of the things that one of my hopes for this commission has always been that we are kind of a bridge, right? That we are helping to facilitate connections between those in our community who haven't historically had a voice or don't know how to access systems to those systems into our city government and our city departments. And so I think from my perspective, and we all have a variety of personal networks and different connections. And I certainly, I do not want to say that we're all the same people here. I'm sure we come from, but I'm just guessing that when I think about the diversity of our community, I don't think it's reflected necessarily in this commission. So for me, it's how do we do, my professional capacity, I do community relations in this community is one of those communities. And how do we facilitate things where we have like the chair and the chief and the mayor in different spaces in this community to have conversations about what are the concerns that people are having and how can the city and its different agencies better serve different parts of our communities. And I know we're in a challenging moment in terms of community gatherings and things like that, but we have done that at the district in terms of going out to some of our Spanish speaking families and some of our Somali families and meeting them where they are and trying to build connections and make connections to help identify those folks that want to engage and want to be more involved. And I guess I would like to see us working with Parks and Rec and the police department and other agencies to do that, to help them build their networks. And Julie does a fantastic job. I don't know if there's anything that we can do that Julie hasn't already done. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case in other departments. And I know the city is working hard on its own sort of equity journey and helping to embrace other communities. But I just don't, if our role is to advise those departments, I don't know what we're going to tell them that you guys don't already know.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a good point. I think you're raising, a valid concern. I also I guess I would caution the Human Rights Commission from selling itself short. You just offered up some perspectives in your statement there that I think are useful and could be beneficial to the department. So I also think that it's important to understand the Human Rights Commission is not necessarily the only group that the city staff would be tapping into to try to formulate ideas on any particular project. I mean, it's always going to depend on the scope of what we're talking about here. And we're talking about hypothetical sort of nebulous things right now, but there is outreach that the city does right now. There's many ways that we get feedback on things. I think what we're talking about here is I think there's opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to be more intentionally a part of that. And I also think that it stands to reason that in the future, new folks will join the Human Rights Commission and new perspectives will be brought to the table. And that's an ever-changing thing. I mean, the Human Rights Commission has changed significantly from when I started in my role. I think there is no person on this commission today that was on the commission 4 years ago when I had my first Human Rights Commission meeting. So it is a group that changes, and there's always new perspectives offered up. And I do agree that I think a key role or an important role for the Human Rights Commission is that building bridges piece. And so I think there's a way to advise staff on, well, have you thought about working with this group, or this person has a good, perspective on this topic, and you might want to connect with them, and sort of, offering up those things. I think there's a lot of ways that the Human Rights Commission can think outside of just your own personal experience and think about the networks that you have and how do they come to bring to bear on the thing that we're trying to achieve. So
Maybe they could help us recruit the Parks and Rec and police.
I think it can go both ways. Yep. And that's what a partnership's really about. So
Yeah, I think to Commissioner Haga's point, and not to skip forward in the agenda at all, we have a lot of appointments coming up, but we can't appoint people to the commission that don't apply. Same thing with the Human Rights Award. We need to raise notoriety about the application process, and I know that's something that we're undertaking. But looking back at our joint meeting with council, one thing that was easily identified by both council and members of the Human Rights Commission is the amount of passion that every commissioner has for human rights. And I think having more outlets to demonstrate that passion and act as an agency of resource and education, as opposed to sitting in City Hall and being kind of an echo chamber amongst ourselves. Yeah, we're passionate. I think the more outlets we have to demonstrate that, the more effective we're going to be as a group. So I'm all for, exploring these potential partnerships and these relationships and determining how effective we can be in those roles, or if we're just going to be a silent sit on our hands observer. But again, to Commissioner Haga's point, I'd love us to be more representative of the community at large, but we are who we are. And hopefully we can change that. Not that I don't want to be with all of my fellow commissioners here, but hopefully we can be more representative of the community at large in the future. But for the time being, we can do our job as best we can.
I saw Commissioner Dunbar.
Yeah, my comment is not on the content of this proposal, but on the process. At the end of the work session, I specifically asked what the next steps were going to be, and Mr. Podorowski said that it would be logical that when the report comes, it would go to us, and that we would have the first opportunity to make a plan from that. And I was really impressed by that and thought, well, they are allowing us to develop what we feel is the good plan for us. And so when I saw this, that not only have you made a plan, but you've met with other, the park board and the police, I was really let down.
Well, I guess I'll apologize. That was not the intent. We have not met with the park board, so I want to clarify with that. This is a discussion among staff. I think our intent here is to offer up some thoughts and ideas to work with you all to propel the conversation forward. If you prefer we slow down, we can certainly do that.
Commissioner Carlson?
Unmuting myself. I think we've got a great opportunity ahead of us. I think that, like Commissioner Haga and Commissioner Spreadbury, when I look at our faces, we have a common denominator. But I also know as individuals, each of us reach out into other portions, other parts of our community, and have a degree of influence, perhaps, if that's the right word. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to develop a strategic plan or goal to help us do that. I think to Commissioner Dunbar's comment, I anticipated a summary from our joint meeting with City Council. And so I was surprised to see the responses to the questions as being the only report from our 2.5+ hours of meeting with City Council. But putting that aside, I think one of the things that we can think about is how do we move forward? Can we put together some goals that help us become more visible, perhaps, throughout our community, through relationships with perhaps even the fire department, the police department, whatever department. So I'd like to focus our discussion about how do we move forward? If we can't get past, or if we are unable to set goals or objectives or programming opportunities, then maybe we need to have staff find someone who can help us set goals and objectives.
I agree with that, Commissioner Carlson. As far as I feel like this report was basically the notes from our meeting when we had our group discussions, but then came back together to, just say what were the key themes that came out of that. I think that it would be beneficial and is something that we had asked for before this joint session, or I wasn't under the impression we would be getting kind of a plan or suggestions or guidance of, here's what we agree on, here's what we disagree on. And by having the facilitators of the group, I thought there would be some kind of more concrete outcome than just reiterating what was said at the meeting. I think there was very productive conversation, but I think that towards the end of the meeting, we did not really come up with concrete goals of what both the council and the commission envisioned. There was vague ideas or, abstract ideas like what we would hope for. And so now I think it's time to kind of dig in and come up with those, at least from our perspective. And then at which point it sounds like then we can present that to the council to see if they agree with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess what I'm attempting to propose is a way to accomplish, I think what I'm hearing you describe is taking the high-level notes that were put down by the Fersmans based on the conversation that we had, and turning those into goals and objectives that this group would use to drive its work. I think the challenging situation that we have in front of us and the reality that we have is that we meet for an hour and a half once a month. And so in an attempt to provide resources to this group to move it forward, we are taking staff resources and directing it at this effort is sort of the recommendation. My hope is to get feedback from you all about what you would like to see, the goals and objectives that you feel are important to move forward, and use that with staff to further develop these ideas to propose back to you. So the proposal is not that staff is dictating to you what you will do. It is staff trying to listen and take your feedback and put it into a direction that you all are weighing in on and giving us feedback on, so that we can, attempt to put it in a forward direction that you all are interested in. And so I guess that's what we were trying to do when we met ahead of this meeting. On one hand, I'm hearing that the report that I put together maybe took things a little too far. On the other, I'm hearing that the report the Fursmans put together is a little too loose. And so, hopefully we can strike a middle ground. I think, what I'm attempting to do here is define some roles for the Human Rights Commission, because what I've heard consistently is that there's not lack of clarity on that. And so what I'm putting forward here are, 3 roles I think that are really in addition to what you all have been doing with your events that you typically do, by advising the city departments, and really starting with police and parks, playing a role in other, trying to seek out other city groups to serve on their boards, which I think expands the exposure of the Human Rights Commission, which I've heard multiple occasions you all desire to do. And then also volunteering, which I know you all value, that direct involvement in the community. So trying to find opportunities for that to happen beyond what it does today. So my sense is those 3 things align with the themes that were identified by the Fursmans in their report, and align with a lot of what I've heard in the past. So I guess I'm curious to know your feedback on those items, if you feel I'm missing something or that some of those things don't resonate. And I guess I'm also trying to propose a process to put together the plan that I'm hearing you desire, recognizing the limited resources that we have in an hour and a half on one time a month. So I'd love feedback on how we move that forward, if you have that tonight.
Could the commissioners do a work session to chew this up? And that isn't what I meant.
So I am super sympathetic to, I too heard it's too prescriptive and it's not prescriptive enough. And that's a challenge. I think there's also a challenge, as Nate said, when you have a group that gets together once a month for a limited amount of time. It really does fall to the staff to keep things moving forward, unless you have a bunch of people who have capacity to move the ball down the field in their own time. That said, I love me a good strategic plan, and I have written several, and I think I like those goals. I think that there's a little bit more of a process where, what I'm hearing, Nate, and this is no disrespect to you, is that people don't feel quite the ownership in the goals that you have laid out. So I'm wondering and I'm happy to lead a subcommittee and pull together something for folks. We figure out a way to have small groups react to it. I don't know. We'll have to talk about open meeting law and how we don't violate that. But so that we have actual, because I don't want to slow down. Like I feel like that's been something that that's another piece of feedback that we've all given us. It feels like things don't move quickly enough because we're only meeting once a month. So I'm wondering if we can't have a small group before our next meeting get together and really hammer out and maybe do some surveying through Nate of the commission to identify goals, bring that back together and come up with something that feels more owned by the commission maybe than this does at this moment. And I will volunteer. I will make the time, I promise.
I think that's doable. I think, if you feel that a work session is desired, we could do that. We'd need to know folks' availability to do that. If we want to do a subcommittee, the intent here, the thought was that, staff would be meeting to take feedback from tonight and try to formulate something for you all to react to at the next meeting. We could do a joint, staff sort of subcommittee format. I think there's a lot of ways that this could go. But yeah, need to hear from you all what you think might be the best approach.
Well, I felt excited this summer. It seemed like the only time we got stuff done is when we met in those different subcommittees over different topics. And things felt like they moved forward. And then we reported back, and that worked. I thought that was a good thing.
I think Kaylee's idea is great, and that she
Yeah.
offered to head it up is really a bonus for all of the rest of us.
I'll make the time and I volunteer also.
But I am totally fine with partnering with staff, Nate, because I think you're right. Like there needs to be staff investment and involvement in this, given how much staff resources are driving this anyway. So I think it does need to be a joint effort. And if that's beyond you, that's fine. You have been our staff resource through many a subcommittee meeting. So
No, we can do that. That's not a problem. So I'm hearing Commissioners Haga and Carlson expressing interest in that. Sounds like Commissioner Dunbar is supportive of the direction.
I'm supportive of the direction, but I'm leaving town for about 25 days, so I won't be very helpful. I'm leaving on October 1st.
well, I think maybe we can pull together. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I
Sir.
just wanted to say I'm supportive and available if anybody would like my participation. I'm happy to. I think making a strategic plan and taking ownership of the goals rather than being a set of goals is really going to empower us to take action. Go ahead.
I'll need to consult. I mean, Nate, I'll need your expertise in terms of how surveying the group works outside of a meeting. But I think we could pull together a survey pretty quickly before Judy jets out of town on her. You go on vacation all the time, Judy. I'm
retired.
I know. I'm looking forward to it. So that we can have some of that information, and whatever we need from folks, so that we're prepared to have those conversations with staff.
Well, yeah. Maybe we should talk more about the survey concept. Just develop that a little bit more. I'm not sure exactly where your thoughts are. I think we can do it, not a problem, and we can help with that. But where do you thinking we want to sort of pull out with that?
So I think like stakeholder feedback is really an important part of any strategic planning process. Yep. And we've done some of that with the Furmans. We've got some of that, but I think you have 3 goals. I'm thinking we get some feedback specific to those goals, and if not those goals, then what other places can and should the commission focus on, so that we can really, I think if we come to the next meeting and we get those goals identified, then the actual work plan rolls out of that pretty quickly. And they may end up being the same 3 goals. I just, we're an hour into the conversation, and I don't feel people grabbing onto them. And so I'm just thinking if we, people know now that that's going to come out, we're going to ask for, if you don't like these 3 goals, what is it about them that isn't resonating, and where are the areas where we think constructively we could provide support to the council and to our community. So.
All right.
Question, Kaylee, when you're using the word goals, are you referencing the 3 roles that have been suggested for us?
Well, I was just using Nate's language. I'm going to throw him under the bus because he's the city guy. Whether it's roles or goals, I think that they're kind of interrelated, right? Because if your role is volunteering, then your goal is to create engagement. So whichever whether it's roles or goals, and it could be that I'm listening through my not quality iPod earbuds and I'm not hearing things correctly. So,
well, I was just reading from the work packet, and I keep seeing roles in there, but I'm not seeing the word goals. So I just want to make sure I hadn't missed something. So our 22 pages of notes here. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm hearing is we want to formulate a subcommittee. We'll pull a meeting together joint with the subcommittee and staff to talk about pulling together a draft plan here that we would present in October. I did present 3 ideas for, we'll call them roles, for the Human Rights Commission. We can pull a survey together around those to get further feedback from you all ahead of this joint meeting. So we'll try to shoot and do that in the next couple weeks here. And, you know, we can think of some other questions that would get towards some of the, you know, actual activities and things that you see, you know, wanting to pursue, to inform that meeting discussion that we'll have after the survey is complete. Right now, I'm hearing we have Commissioner Haga and Commissioner Carlson interested in serving on that subcommittee. If it's 2 of you, that's fine. I think we've got room for 1 more. So if there is someone else who wants to offer up their name in the hat, that's fine. Commissioner Spreadbury, your audio was a little challenging earlier, so I don't know if you offered yourself up for that, and I also don't want to voluntold you to do it. So
is that clear?
You're in.
Thumbs up. Okay. I'm if you want me, I'm in. Sorry about the audio.
All right. So those are the 3 then, Commissioners Haga, Carlson, and Spreadbury. If everyone's okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing head nods. Okay, good. So we'll move forward with that. And we'll still work to try and have something a little bit more formulated come October, because we want to continue to move this forward. Ideally, before the year is done, we can have everyone feeling comfortable and agreeing to the plan forward. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So before we move forward, Commissioner Carlson, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw you looked like you wanted to say something. You're muted, Sarah.
I'll save my comments and suggestions until we can sit down and work on goals and objectives and how we achieve some of those goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I think we could move on to our next item on the agenda. Item 6C is the River City Days Committee. And we all know River City Days came and went and then got rescheduled and still could not happen. So, well, we are sad that we did not get our chance to interact and engage with the community like we do every summer. I think it's best for the safety of everyone that this has been the decision. Nate prepared a short report about it. I won't read it to you, but he did mention that we had talked about doing a letter to the editor or something, a communication, so that we could let the public know that we really missed them. Also, you know, I've thought about that we could really have this letter or communication be impactful in a way where we can talk about some of our goals or invite people to attend meetings, to become part of the commission. We do have, and we'll talk about it later, but we do have 2 alternate spots open. And then depending on who returns when their term is up, then we may have even more openings. And I would love to invite people from the community to be a part of the commission. I've learned a lot about the city just by serving on this commission, both how the city works and personally growing through things I've been exposed to while serving. So I think we should still write some sort of communication. I don't think the due date is necessary to pick right now, but I think that maybe that committee who had originally talked about meeting on that should continue with that and bring something to the commission to approve, and then we can send it out.
Yeah, my recollection was that committee was going to meet and kind of talk about key messages, and then I was going to take those and try to pull them into it. And I never, and if something was sent, I apologize, I don't recall seeing it. But I do think, I mean, we have an opportunity to promote the award. We have an opportunity to promote people joining the commission. I think there's a lot of opportunities coming up. So I'm happy to provide support in any way there. Just looking for a little bit more concrete direction.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the committee did not meet. And I guess I'll take responsibility for that. We weren't able to organize the meeting, but my hope, and I think what we could try to accomplish tonight, is just sort of put some of those ideas forward. And if you want to take that, then Commissioner Haga, to try and draft something, we could do that. Now, if we prefer to just do a subcommittee meeting and go from there, that's certainly an option as well. But I think that, like Commissioner Welvert was laying out, I do think there's an opportunity here to just raise visibility with the community, let them know that you all are here and you're doing good work. I think we could mention that you are in the process of a strategic plan type of effort, and some of the bigger picture objectives I think that we share in that, as far as getting more visibility, more involvement for the Human Rights Commission, the work that the city does, so people are aware of that, promoting the award, promoting the open positions that are currently existing, and encouraging people to apply and participate in those ways, reminding people when we meet. I think those are all possibilities that a letter could include. And I don't know if you all have thoughts on that as to other things that you'd want to touch on.
I don't want the letter to just be a commercial, though. I would really appreciate if it talked a little bit about our values and what we strongly believe in. Of course, we believe in the values of the city and the things that they came up with years ago that talk about equity, inclusion, and a safe place for people to live, things like that. But I think that as a Human Rights Commission, we could also add on that, or and not embellish, but just add on to that of things that we are that we're passionate about and that we really have a heart for in this community. I think it's important, though, that we do highlight the things, the opportunities for people within the community to interact with the Human Rights Commission and know what we do.
Jumping ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Jumping ahead in our agenda, we have a report or marketing plan for the Human Rights Award, and that has some rather detailed dates about nominations being accepted for the Human Rights Award and other activities centering around the MLK and the Human Rights Award. So I guess I would see this letter that you're going to write, Kaylee, for us, draft for us. It would talk about the opportunities and highlight perhaps some of the programming that we've had over the past couple of years as evidenced and as part of the Human Rights Commission's work for the city of Chaska.
This is turning into a really big letter. What if we split it up more and got more communication out there more often, with maybe more chances of people seeing it, and just broke it down a little bit? Kind of like what they're doing for the award.
Yeah, I think there could be a balance struck. I think there are opportunities to do things, in our social media outlets and things like that, which is really kind of, for the award, as we dive into that in a little bit, we're looking at a number of outlets there to try and promote that. But we could do, things to highlight different topics on our, social media for the Human Rights Commission or something like that, if you're wanting to do that in addition to a letter. Yeah, there's a lot of different directions we could take.
I sort of see this letter as kind of like a introductory, hi, remember us? It's nice to see you again kind of thing. And to kind of give an overall perspective, I mean, more general. And then I look at things from like this, the marketing plan for the Human Rights Award. There's a lot of things in there that will show people and tell people who we are and what we believe. And so I think that, putting plans like this in place are what is helpful to me, and I think would build on sending a general letter, So if we could put like marketing plans in place like this, when we have things, that we're promoting or whatever, or that we're a part of in the community, I think then it all kind of happens organically, So I think that the letter does not have to be super long. I think it should just be kind of a welcoming and touching base, letting them know that we're here, and maybe, short bit about what we stand for and why we're here.
Yeah. And we'll see you next year at River City Days, hopefully.
Other thoughts? Okay, so does that give you enough information, Kaylee, to draft something up and we don't have to have a meeting?
Yeah.
Would you prefer to have a meeting? Okay. Okay. Well, then we'll let you work your magic, okay? Thank you for doing that. And we'll move on to the next item, which is 6D, which is the MLK Committee update. We have not, did we have a meeting since our last one?
No, we have not.
Yeah, so there's not a lot to update on that, but I know a couple things that I wanted to say. I was thinking about this before our meeting tonight. I know we've discussed, a Zoom or a in-person event. And in light of the uncertainty still, I have apprehensions about doing in-person or a hybrid event. I feel like people have learned how to really effectively use Zoom or another media platform. And so I would like to see it done so that more people could attend by doing it virtually. I know that's something we can all discuss, but it's something that I've been thinking of because I think it would be planned a little bit differently if it's virtually than it would be in person. And then my other question is, what is the max number of participants at a Zoom event? Or do we have to look at a different platform?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. We can look at different platforms. Zoom, I think it's like 100-ish or something.
It depends on your package,
Yeah.
but you can also stream it. I mean, you can Facebook Live and YouTube live a Zoom so that people who can't be in the call, and if it's not participatory, it doesn't really matter. If you live stream it, then you're opening it up to a wide audience. I'm just curious from a planning perspective, Nate, what is kind of our drop dead of determining when we need to decide if we're going to, and I don't think it would be full in person, it'd either be hybrid or completely virtual.
Yeah, the event center is booked for that day, so it's reserved. And so as far as having the space to do it, there's not really a drop dead there. I think it'd more revolve around, any impacts to the participating groups and their ability to prepare one way or the other. And also, our need to promote to people so they're aware as to how to participate. So just to venture a guess on that question, probably at least a month out, I would think we would want to have that decision made. I tend to agree with Commissioner Welvert's perspective. I don't think that the environment is going to change that significantly, but hope I'm wrong. I hope it improves, but I suspect we're going to be in a similar situation come MLK Day as we are today. So,
can you just remind us what capacity is for the event center under the MDH regulations?
Yep, it would be 80 people, would be a quarter of total capacity.
Okay.
That includes staff that's at the
80 people total.
Yes.
Yep. So, if we're all there and we've got speakers and we've got the jazz band and all that kind of stuff, we could fill it up pretty quickly with just the, everyone except for general public. And so I think that's definitely, and that's been a logistical concern for a lot of things that we've tried to do, coming to that realization that, boy, once you, bring the people there that are making it the entertaining thing that people want to interact with, you've now filled it up. And so people can't actually come to interact with it. And that's a pretty common challenge with these things. So I don't know that we need to decide that point tonight, but I agree with you. I think the way that things are today and seem to be trending, there's a good chance that it ends up being, a Zoom or some platform like that. And to Commissioner Haga's point, I think we can reach a really broad audience because MLK, the event, at least the way we've done it so far, isn't necessarily a real interactive thing. It's been more experiential. And so that's something that lends itself very well to, the various live outlets that we've got, YouTube and Facebook and all that.
Well, I would like to say that I would really like to have another subcommittee meeting before our next meeting so that we can come with some more details about how the plan is moving forward.
We'll get that scheduled.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to page 2. And in new business, our next topic is the Human Rights Award. We're getting to the time of year that we start thinking about the award as it's presented at the MLK breakfast. And Nate provided us with this amazing marketing plan.
That's
Very
Kevin Wright's
thorough.
work, not mine, so I'm not going to take credit for that.
Kevin's writing all over it. Good job, Kevin. I think I really appreciate the way that this is laid out. Does anyone else have comments on it? I'm looking for my questions I wrote down, so someone else can speak if they want.
Kevin is here, so he can chime in and answer questions and just if that.
Yep, I'm here and got my hair cut just so I could turn the camera on today. So.
Thank you, Kevin, for doing this. I like the fact that we've got a plan this year of how to reach out and engage not only the community, but in interest, but in potentially submitting applications.
Yeah, and you may notice, just to kind of maybe spur some conversation as well, that we did actually kind of dial back from our cadence that we originally proposed the last 2 years to every other week versus every week. I will say that I think, maybe on my side, I was maybe a little too ambitious to propose that. I don't think I was quite hitting that cadence before. So I thought if we dialed it back and then kind of really spent some time to kind of focus on some of those previous winners or previous recipients of the award, we're trying to expand our video capacity anyway. So we're trying to do more community type videos. So this might be a good way to kind of do that, as well as kind of really hit at the, what the award means to those that received it and the work they did, and how that reflects in the community, and hopefully inspires more to kind of continue to improve our community.
Well, I can't find my pre-written questions I had, so I just kind of looked, and the things that stuck out at me were, I really like the idea of maybe doing some videos that highlight past recipients. But I was wondering when you were anticipating that coming out. Would it be before this year's Human Rights Award presentation?
I think you're on mute there, Kevin.
I don't know why I muted myself, but I did. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the plan real quick. So yeah, so the cadence would then kind of October 15th would be kind of the first one that we would highlight a previous award winner. And then same for November 12th, as well as December 3rd. So those are kind of the three kind of posting opportunities we had to kind of package a 2 to 3 minute video to highlight on social media of previous award winners, and kind of use those dates as ones to highlight those people.
The other thing that I was wondering about is where you mentioned on the second page about business to business. And I was wondering how you envisioned that was going to be utilized, I guess. How would the whole thing work so that would help promoting the Human Rights Award?
Yeah, and kind of as the conversation's gone on tonight, it's kind of using those other groups within or the other agencies or groups within our community and their network to kind of help publicize the award. So, the CDA we've worked with before and kind of tried to help. And I think it's more so building on that partnership to say, here the award is we're accepting applications for that. So, if they know people there that would be worthy of receiving the award or nominating. So it's really kind of getting those nominations in. So the more I felt we could get it into the hands of the businesses. So the chamber also, has nonprofits that are involved and businesses themselves that do good work in the community. The Downtown Business Alliance is another one that's connected into that. So it's more so kind of expanding beyond even just the nonprofits or local faith organizations, and just to kind of any way we can kind of get it in to the mind of someone that may know someone else or may have an idea of a business or someone they work with that they can nominate. So it's just more of an awareness campaign. So we have contacts in each one of these groups that we would just reach out to and say, hey, we're accepting nominations. Here's the application, here's how it works, and if you could promote it within your employee groups, within your business organizations, and just your contacts, whether that's by email or sharing what we post on our social media, those would kind of be the ways we'd help kind of expand our reach.
Thank you.
Is the chamber still on board to be a co-sponsor? I know that COVID has hit a lot of the chambers around us really hard, and I don't think this is a huge expenditure, but we're sure that they're on board.
Well, so they've been a co-sponsor of the MLK Day breakfast in the past, which is separate from the award itself. The award we haven't had a co-sponsor, so just want to make sure. But yeah, I think we still need to pin down exactly where they stand as it relates to the MLK breakfast. As far as it goes, towards promoting things and things like that, the chamber is typically a very willing partner in any of that. So I think they're definitely one to approach and ask, make that ask about the award itself and try to get it out. And like Kevin said, I think the more people we can get it in front of, whether it be businesses or individuals or community organizations, whatever the case may be, just the more exposure it gets. Because I promise you, there is a lot of work going on out there in our community that none of us are even aware of. And I think it would be interesting to get award, nominations in that would help us discover some of that stuff. So I guarantee that's going on. So.
When are the nominations going to be due?
So just to put a placeholder in there, I did also update the application form on the website today. So I guess arbitrarily we can easily be changed. I just put December 11th as a date, which is the day. It's a Friday, so it can be changed. But in the past we've had it at November 15th or around that time before Thanksgiving. But I thought it might be better to kind of have a few more weeks to help promote.
Sure. Well, just for reference, our December meeting falls on Christmas Eve. So I don't know if we were going to move that up to the 17th of December.
Mm-hmm.
It would give us time. That would still give us.
Yep. Yeah, that would be the intent, is to hold it a week earlier.
So I did my best to put my Nate hat on and said December 17th will be that December meeting, and you'll have a perfect week to review nominations.
Yes. Yep. And that would be the intent. I think last year we did at the December meeting because we wanted to try to extend the deadline as far as possible, knowing that we were going to present the award at the MLK event. So trying to really maximize that opportunity there.
And then leaving time for holidays to happen and to reach out to the winner to, connect with them, to get to know them more before the MLK breakfast.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on. Commissioner terms and reappointment process. So I had asked Nate how we were looking as we come up to the end of the year, and he sent out a report, and there are 5 commissioners who are up for reappointment at the end of this year. And I'm not asking anyone to declare anything tonight, but I just wanted everyone to be aware that that's coming up. I reapplied last year, and you fill out the same form as you did when you originally joined the commission. You go through the interview process again with city council, and then they make appointments based on their reactions to your interviews and your application. It's fairly straightforward. I just wanted people to be aware of it and to make sure that they apply in a timely fashion if they're so inclined to do that. I would love to have each of you come back next year and serve another term. But I'm always excited to meet more people from the community. And so if, you've served your time and are ready to open it up for someone else to join the commission and serve their community, I think that would be a great thing too. So I just want to make sure that everyone knew about that. Think about it. And if you have any questions, ask me or Nate for logistical or moral support or something.
Yeah,
I do have a question. How do you want to be notified whether we're planning to seek another term or not? How and when do you want that information?
Yep. The minimum thing you need to do is submit the application. And I did attach the application
Right.
agenda tonight, so you have it. So that would be what you need to do. And so you could submit that to me. You could submit it to Denise Beebe, our city clerk. Either one would be appropriate. And I would recommend you do that before the year is over. Because we will be lining up the interviews for the city council to do at their January meetings. And that is going to depend on, which meeting that ends up will depend on your availability, the number of applicants. Because there's also people, I think it's the Parks Board is the other one that has people up for reappointment this year. So there'll be, we'll need to negotiate that among everyone.
And if a person is not planning to reapply, when and how do you want that notification?
At minimum, you just don't submit an application and we'll know that you haven't applied. And so I would appreciate notice beyond that, but you're not obligated to do anything other than not apply.
Okay.
So we always appreciate knowing that we haven't missed your application. So
right.
Communication about that is helpful. And we also always appreciate the opportunity to thank you for your service if you're deciding that you're not going to reapply. So,
got it. Thank you.
Yep. And I'd also suggest, whether you're deciding to reapply or not, we do have 2 openings for alternate positions. And I think there's plenty of folks out there who would be great to serve on this committee or on this commission. But my experience is that there's often folks who don't consider the opportunity unless they're directly asked and invited. And sometimes that goes a long way in having that communication. So don't shy away. You definitely have an opportunity to help, build the commission in a way that is representative of our community, as we've all discussed. And there's 2 openings right now that help us get down that path. So.
Nate, I was just going to mention to you too that the application form has Denise's name on it before she got married this year.
Oh, well, we will need to update that. Yeah. She is no longer Denise Wetzel, although she'll know who you're talking about if you call her that. She's now Denise Beebe. So.
Okay, moving on. Other business. I wanted to just bring this up something that I got an email about today. And just going to read a short description of a movie that I was made aware of that's going to be shown locally. So I think this sounds like a great opportunity if people feel like going to the movies. I've talked to some people that I know that own theaters in different parts of Minnesota. And they said, if you're wondering if you should go to a movie, you should. You can feel safe. There's usually not a whole lot of people in there at the time that you go. I have not tried it yet, but I've been assured of all the safety measures and everything like that. So just want to share this with you. It's called Neither Wolf Nor Dog. So Neither Wolf Nor Dog is based on the Minnesota Book Award winning novel by Kent Nerburn. Is a non-Hollywood Native American themed film. It will show at the Chanhassen Cinema for at least a week starting the 2nd of October. In a note from the filmmaker, Stephen Lewis Simpson, he says, the film, like the novel, has been used a fair bit by schools, and the narrative is seen as a great cross-cultural teaching tool. He goes on to say, the film stars Elder Dave Baldeagle, who passed away at age 97. His incredible performance alone gives the film a great cultural weight. During the film's climax, his character takes us into the heart of Wounded Knee. Dave's family connection to the massacre was even deeper than the one of the character he played. Although the film is fiction, the script was thrown away at this point in the filming, and Dave delivers the most moving of improvised scenes. At the end of the film, or at the end of filming this scene, he says he had been holding in those words for 95 years. We have never seen a Native elder in a role like this before. So I've not viewed the film personally, but this compelling description already has me planning to take it in early October. I'm going to pass along the email that I received to Nate so he can distribute it to you, or you can contact the Chanhassen Cinema to find out the show times. I just thought it sounded like a great opportunity.
I would just also like to throw in a pitch. Nate shared information a few weeks ago about he talked about volunteering as one of our roles, about the food distribution events that are happening through Carver County. And I was the one in Chaska last week. There are 3 more coming up, one in Norwood Young America, one in Carver, and one again in Chaska. And it was a great event. It was a great opportunity to serve the community. From a safety perspective, everybody stays in their cars. You're putting stuff in people's trunks. You're not interacting with people and you're outside. Tremendous amount of need out there. And I think it's good from a visibility standpoint to be out there with other volunteers, showing how much we care about this community and people in it. So I know they're still looking for volunteers, and I'm sure Nate can resend out that link for those 3 events. Just encourage everybody to be present and participate as you can and are comfortable.
Can I ask if we volunteer for events like that, should we be wearing our Chaska Human Rights t-shirt or name tag or identifying ourselves in any way or not?
I think if you want to, by all means. I would say the name tag probably not necessary. You get kind of sweaty and dirty, but you can certainly wear your t-shirt. I think that would be perfectly appropriate to identify yourself.
I was at one of those distributions earlier this summer, and they actually passed out name tags, but no one had them on by the end of the day because we were all sweaty and they didn't stick to our shirt anymore. So I think it's just more about just being a part of this and really feeling like you're serving your community, getting to know people, and just letting them see half your face because you're wearing a mask, but just, sharing some love with people. I agree, Kaylee. It was a wonderful day, and I hope I can do it again soon.
As we were talking, Kevin forwarded me the information, so I'll get it out to all of you. Looks like the next one in Chaska is October 9th from noon to 1:30. So if you want to mark your calendar for that event.
There are 2 shifts. There's like a morning shift, like there's an early shift, and then there's a distribution shift. So it's more than the hour and a half. But.
Okay. Yep. So I'll forward that on to you also. You have it. There's also a link for you to sign up to volunteer within that communication. One other item that I'll add is that I believe it was just today, a mailing went out to all residents of the city of Chaska from the city of Chaska, particularly the police department. And so this is a continuation of the community conversations that we had. Oh, what month was that? June, I want to say, following the murder of George Floyd. And this was really, and how our community views our police department, ways that our police department can continue to improve and best serve our community. And so there was a set of questions in those conversations, and we held one in person at the event center at the time, and we also had a Zoom follow-up event as well that were attended by many of you. And those same questions are now being mailed out to the community to ask for people to, write down their thoughts and return them to us if they desire. So it's going out in Spanish, English, and Somali to every household. So it'll be interesting to see what we get back, and we certainly hope that we get people's responses, whatever they may be. That helps us inform our work. So look for that in your mailbox.
Thank you. If there's no other business, then does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
So moved by Haga.
Seconded by Carlson.
Can you call the roll, Nate?
Oh, yes, I suppose when you do the roll. Yes, Commissioner Bean,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunbar,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Haga,
Yes.
Commissioner Spreadberry.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you'd be able to respond. I know you're tending to things. And Commissioner
got out.
Welbert.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We clear there, Kevin?